I got home after a 14-hour shift and found my wife's ex-husband drilling my wife. I grabbed my Magnum and told him to leave. But then my daughters stepped in and said, "Dad, you're not in charge of this family anymore. You need to accept the new reality. Uncle Bob is twice the man you'll ever be." I didn't say a word, just smiled, and walked out. The next day, they got one text saying what I did. My WhatsApp exploded with 57 desperate SMS, all begging me to come back. I remember the morning sunlight filtering through the kitchen window, illuminating the small motes of dust floating in the air. It was so bright that day, so at odds with the crushing realization that had settled in my chest. My morning coffee tasted bitter, and it had nothing to do with how I brewed it. Across from me sat my wife, Brenda, looking through the local newspaper. She kept stirring her tea absently, as though she could barely focus on anything. To my right, her daughter, my stepdaughter, Karen, quietly tapped away on her phone like she was physically tethered to it. We had been married for 5 years. 5 years of mild ups, mild downs, and a slow, predictable routine. Nothing in those early moments screamed impending disaster, but the cracks were there. Hairline fissures that deepened day by day, until they were impossible to ignore. Brenda and I used to share warmth, quiet mornings talking about future plans, or even silly banter about something on TV. Now, we were reduced to a few grunts, half-formed comments about bills or schedules, and a tension so palpable it practically took up space at the table. That day, as I took a tentative sip of coffee, a subtle shift in the room told me something big was about to happen. Brenda folded her newspaper and laid it down almost too neatly. She held on to its edges, biting her lip as though summoning some hidden reservoir of courage. I felt my stomach knot. These last few weeks had been odd. I tried telling myself it could be stress, maybe she was just tired, overworked, or maybe it was something I'd done. I would have welcomed any scenario but the one I feared most. Yet the fear clung to my mind, insisted that yes, the worst had arrived. It was the phone, that first signal of disaster. She was never without it. Even in bed, the device was always locked, notifications hidden. She would flip the screen down whenever I entered a room, as if I were some intruder in her private world. Months of that had turned me into a suspicious wreck. I had tried to push my paranoia aside, but it would not be quiet. And so, on a week evening when I could stand it no longer, I hired a private investigator. It cost me a chunk of change, $2,000 I could have used on something else. Maybe stashing more into Karen's college fund. But desperation triumphed. I needed the truth. And the truth, as I soon learned, was that Brenda was in contact with her ex-husband, Marcus. The same man she divorced after he nearly destroyed her life with abuse, drunken rages, police sirens, and restraining orders. That was the man she was choosing over me, lying to me about, and, as I would find out, sleeping with. So I waited. And sure enough, that morning was the moment she decided to drop her little bombshell. She folded the paper shut, pressed her lips together, and finally spoke. "Brian," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled, trying to sound gentle, yet the tension in her jaw gave away her trepidation. My heart hammered in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm, to remain the collected man I always pretended to be. I set my coffee mug down, hearing the dull clink as porcelain met the table. I waited a beat, my eyes fixed on hers, and replied, "Oh yes, dear. Go on, I'm listening." My voice was measured, a neutral evenness that belied the storm in my gut. Karen glanced up from her phone, flicked her gaze between Brenda and me, and smirked before looking down again. She always had that air of cynicism, a reflexive sneer that rarely left her face, but I paid it no mind, still focusing on Brenda. She took another breath. "I'll be out of the house for a month," she said finally. Her words fell into the hush of the room like a jagged rock plunked into a serene pond. I stayed silent, trying not to show alarm. A month. That was no quick getaway to a friend's place. Something big was being confessed, so I just let her continue. "I mean," she hesitated, "I'm going to stay with Marcus. My ex, it's his birthday month." Her voice was nearly trembling, but she looked at me steadily. "I want to make it good for him, and I figure, if I tell you, it's not really cheating." The logic was so ridiculous I nearly laughed. "Not really cheating because I'm telling you." A wave of disbelief crashed over me, but I remained outwardly calm. She was looking for a reaction, either permission, or an explosion that she could use against me. I refused to give her that. "Okay," I replied flatly. She seemed momentarily confused by my non-reaction. I could sense her bracing for an argument, but I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I asked the straightforward question gnawing at me. "So what exactly are you planning over there, Brenda? You going to be his cook, his cleaning lady, and his lover all rolled into one? Is that the plan?" A twinge of dark sarcasm slipped into my tone. "Did he run out of money to hire someone else for his needs?" Her face flamed with anger. "What the hell, Brian, don't call me a maid or a hooker. You're being disgusting. I'm going to be with him the way a wife might be with a husband." She jutted her chin, refusing to be cowed. This was the moment, I thought, as my mouth went dry. "But you already have a husband," I said quietly. "Remember the vows we took?" She shrugged, a gesture meant to appear casual, but it came off as defensive. "It's not cheating if I told you," she insisted. "I'm being honest, so it doesn't count as betrayal. You can't accuse me of sneaking around when I'm telling you to your face." I took a slow breath. "Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more."